Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering the woke boycotts. Well, I just got off the phone with Bump Williams from Bump Williams Consulting because I noticed looking at the New York Post, yes, they reported a 24.4% decline in Bud Light sales this week. The sales are reported weekly. But what they didn't report at the New York Post was the volume drop, though it was not released to the public. I contacted Bump Williams, talked to Bump. He's a great guy. He told me the drop in volume for Bud Light for the week ended June 3rd is 28.2% down, a massive number. It's bigger than the week prior. What is going on? In our conversation, he told me it is a historic decline. He's never seen anything like it before, but it's not 24.4%. Yes, it is for revenue, but for volume, it's 28.2%. The volume is a very significant number because that's actual physical cans and bottles not being sold and distributed to people. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. I'm trying to get to 25,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Okay, first from the New York Post, Bud Light sales sink 24.4% as Modelo continues to gain share. That's Modelo Especial that knocked them out of the #1 spot. Modelo Especial numbers are up off the board, 15% up from last year. Obviously, they are taking the place for a lot of people of Bud Light. Bud Light sales continue to plunge as the nation's #1 beer brand continues to lose share to runner-up Modelo Especial, but its sister brands are beginning to recover from the disastrous marketing partnership with Dylan Mulvaney. Bud Light is going to be decimated. The numbers are going to continue to go down. I don't think they're going to turn into zero, but they're never going to be the #1 brand again. That ship has long since sailed. It's over. Sales of Bud Light dropped 24.4% in the week ended June 3rd, slightly worse than the 23.9% decline over the previous week, which had included steep discounting over Memorial Day holiday weekend. And some of those discounts are still out there, according to data from Bump Williams Consulting and Nielsen IQ. Again, that 24.4% number is revenue. It's not physical bottles. Physical bottles and cans down 28.2%. Meanwhile, Anheuser-Busch's Michelob Ultra, the nation's third biggest brand by sales, turned positive for the first time in weeks with a 0.7% increase versus the 0.1% decline in the previous week. But naturally, some people are choosing Michelob Ultra in place of Bud Light also. Elsewhere, Anheuser-Busch continued to drop, although at a slower rate. That's what they look for to see success. Are they dropping? Yes, of course they're dropping, but if they're dropping at a slower rate, maybe it's not as much of a disaster. The flagship Budweiser brand sales were down 7.8% versus 8.5%, while Natural Light sales were down 1% versus a 1.5% decline, and the sales of Busch Light were down 0.8% versus a 3% decline over the same period. Quote, the majority of Anheuser-Busch InBev brands showed an improvement in trend declines versus the prior week, said Bump Williams, head of the consulting firm Bump Williams Consulting. Perhaps this is a turning point. And I'm on his email list as of today, so he's going to get me every weekly release. Mondays, we should have a new video talking about what their sales are of Bud Light. Meanwhile, sales of Modelo Especial were up 12.2% in the most recent week, as the label appears to be increasing its sales growth each week as we get deeper into the summer, Bump Williams said. A week earlier, Modelo Especial sales had risen 9.5%. So it's an increase from 9.5% to 12.2%. I want to own that brand. Anheuser-Busch InBev owns Modelo except in the United States, where New York-based conglomerate Constellation Brands controls it. That means Constellation Brands makes all the money off of Modelo, not Anheuser-Busch, in the United States. Over Memorial Day weekend, considered the kickoff of the beer drinking season, Anheuser-Busch touted a $15 rebate on 18 packs and larger amounts of Bud Light. Over the weekend, a Westchester, New York ShopRite supermarket was selling an 18-pack case of Bud Light and Budweiser for $17.99, down from $21.49, but shoppers could get an extra $8 rebate on the cases according to the packaging. They still have massive rebate programs. The reduction in price is not working. Having spoken to Bump Williams earlier, he agrees that price is not what's driving what's going on with Bud Light right now. It's historic. He's never seen anything like it. Things turned south for Anheuser-Busch after it tapped Mulvaney to market to the LGBT community. The transgender influencer, of course, posted 2 videos and images as a Bud Light marketing partner on April 1st, including one in a bubble bath surrounded by Bud Light cans. That was pretty much the end of Bud Light. That was the multi-billion-dollar loss that they were going to have, especially because the management of Bud Light never came out and explained what is going on with beer cans with Dylan Mulvaney's face on it and Dylan Mulvaney jumping around in a bathtub with Bud Light. That is not something that a lot of us want to associate with, and as a result, the brand was destroyed. Another image included a 16-ounce can, of course, of Bud Light with Mulvaney's face on it, a commemorative can that was given to Mulvaney to celebrate their 1-year anniversary of girlhood. And of course, the backlash is not just about Bud Light. The backlash is about the woke agenda being pushed in media, movies, film, TV, cartoons for children, schools, and now on products, and now from companies. Wherever you go, they're trying to saturate it. I don't know who they is. Whoever it is that's responsible for this agenda, pushing it, because clearly there's some kind of a push going on that people are not organically attracted to. That's what all this backlash is about. There would be no backlash if this was something organic and it was normal and it was in people's lives. There'd be nothing to reject. It would be like, hey, this is around me wherever I go. It's completely normal. Well, it's not that normal. Bartenders are now saying nobody wants Bud Light at any of their special events. This came from Barnastics. We did do a video on this. They service New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Connecticut, and they do little pop-up events when someone has a corporate party or a personal party, and they allow customers to select what they would like to have stocked at their party. People are no longer selecting Bud Light. And that's how you know even this estimate of a permanent 15% dent in sales for Bud Light is on the low side. Because when you go from number 1 to number 3, 4, whatever they're going to wind up being, they're going to lose a lot of shelf space opportunities. This is a shelf space opportunity. When this company says to a corporate client, what would you like to have stocked at your event? They're going to choose 2 or 3 beers. They're not going to choose 40 beers. When you're in the top 1 or 2, you're going to get selected. Bud Light's not going to get selected. Not anymore. So they're going to lose that entire market. They'll, of course, also lose shelf space because of the declining sales of their brand. The stores are not going to stock Bud Light if they can't turn it over on a regular basis. And with respect to all of these rebates and the coupons, that is not going to work to retain shelf space because you can't do those things on a regular basis. Even if you did do those things on a regular basis, it wouldn't be profitable to do. So as Anson Fredericks, former president for distribution for Anheuser-Busch, has told us, expect in September, all the major retailers and even small retailers are going to announce changes in their shelf space that reflect the sales in the last period. As Bud Light sales completely fall apart, they will permanently lose the shelf space they would otherwise have had. We covered from the New York Post how Target's $15 billion, and now it's $16 billion, according to Fox, $15.7 billion loss of market value should be a wake-up call to other CEOs not to go woke and fool around with your customers. Garth Brooks is facing his own boycott because he made comments publicly that people who support the Bud Light boycotts are a-holes. He used the whole word, I will not. Mark Cuban says, don't listen to Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. Listen to him. He says embracing diversity is just good business. Call him woke. From Fortune, Mark Cuban says he has no qualms with being called woke when it comes to inclusivity. Ultimately, he said, embracing diversity is actually just a good business decision. Quote, call me woke. You don't need to call it DEI. You can call it whatever you want. I call it good business, Cuban said in a talk to political and business leaders on Michigan's Mackinac Island, reported by news outlet MLive. Quote, it means taking the people that you've been selling to and making sure your workforce looks like them and making sure you can reflect their values and being able to connect to that. That's what works for me. Now, how did that assessment fit in with Bud Light? They did the Dylan Mulvaney promotion when there was market confusion about whether or not Dylan Mulvaney's face was actually going to be on all of the Bud Light cans. None of this was cleared up by Bud Light. People still don't really understand exactly what happened, and they're still not really telling people exactly what happened. Their customers don't look like Dylan Mulvaney. They never did, and they probably never will. Mark Cuban is a very political guy, and it bothers me to see people make statements like this just to protect their own financial interests and their own political network and connections, because they're doing it at the expense of a public that might not know any better. There are businesses that will listen to Mark Cuban and say, oh, you know what? I like him on Shark Tank. Okay, fine. We'll go more woke. Eventually, it'll work out for us. And they're just going to damage their businesses. Some of them will probably go out of business over this. Bud Light's not going out of business over this. They're owned by a very big company. They will lose several $billion, but they will continue in business. They sell beer in multiple countries. They're just going to have a loss, but that won't be the same thing for another business that takes this terrible advice. While diversity is being politicized more than ever in some corners, Cuban said he believes that will be short-lived and ultimately people, including voters, will be more concerned about things that directly impact their day-to-day lives. But that is what people are concerned about. They're worried about things like this. Woke New York Times for Kids delivers radical gender racial politics to children. The puberty issue recommends children with gender dysphoria explore gender-affirming care. That does affect people directly. It does affect their lives. It does affect their children. There's nothing more important to people than this. So of course you're not going to support companies that have values that impact your children that are not the same as yours. Quote, your constituents wake up in the morning, they don't think about Bud Light, they don't think about Target, they don't think about any of the stuff on the other side either. They think about how they're going to live their lives and what's going to get them satisfaction. Transitioning from the woke debate to politics, Cuban, who had hinted at political aspirations in the past, claiming in 2015 he could beat Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I'd like to see him try. Also had some comments about how candidates are chosen today, saying social media has become too big an influence on voters. Quote, we pay so much attention to the voices that sound like garbage because the problem is no matter how many billions of dollars you have, you can't control social media the way that you can control mass media, because mass media is controlled by just a couple of people. Social media, even with all the censorship that's still out there, gives some direct access to people, and ideas can get out there, and good ideas become very well distributed on social media, and positive change can happen, like the woke boycotts. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Were you surprised to hear that the sales dropping for Bud Light were not just 24.4%, they were actually 28.2%, bigger than last week? Did you realize that bartenders are saying no, people just won't request Bud Light anymore for their special events? And do you agree that Mark Cuban is just looking out for his own special interests? He's not concerned about how other business owners could be affected by making the mistake of going woke and then having to explain to your customers why you didn't listen to them, why you didn't ask them what it was they wanted. If customers want woke stuff, they'll make it clear that they want it. If they don't ask for it, they don't want it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Really appreciate you guys. Please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.